for deep innovation. He has working experience in several institutions in Indonesia. He's a lecturer at the University of Indonesia currently. He's an expert staff in housing in Indonesia banking development. He's also a researcher. He's an economic analyst and intelligence. He worked on the economic intelligence from 2008 to 2009. He is a research associate in Asian Development Bank from 2011 to 2012. Currently, he is the executive director of Next Policy. Moving forward, he has 58 selected newspaper articles. 58 selected newspaper articles. He has 4 books that he published. He has 25 journals that he contributed and published. He has 13 conference papers that are being selected. As I said at the beginning, currently he is the executive director of Next Policy. So our guest speaker today, I welcome you.
Okay, thank you for the nice introduction. Assalamualaikum. Selamat siang, very good afternoon for all of us today here. And it is very, interesting that this is actually just hot cappuccino away from my house. So that this is the first time being here. Just 10 minutes away, meaning that just need to have one hot cappuccino and then you add hot cappuccino and you're adding here. So yeah, it's quite near from my house. So thank you for inviting me. It's super very first time and it's very nice campus, and thank you for your participation in my today's talk. So, as mentioned earlier, I was supposed to do something and do some talks on how we actually try to cope and try to understand what is happening with the SPB, the Silicon Valley Bank. So my title today for today's talk is how we harness the winter. Maybe it's a mad winter, but what we're trying to do is how we going to harness it. In winter time, usually people in Four Seasons country, they have winter, that in every winter they have ample amount of tourism sites. In Tokyo, I was skiing every time when I'm in winter, so I ski and so on and so forth. And other tourism sites also coming from the winter season. So that is actually one of the things that we can do during winter time. We can actually still enjoy ourselves. It's not that in winter we need to hibernate just like a big teddy bear in the polar. Not exactly. We can do that, of course, but we can also do other things. We can actually harness the winter time. You can still go out in the winter. You can still use your jackets. You can still do your economic activities in winter. It's just for the season. It's not that we getting away from the winter, but we are trying to harness it. We are trying to indulge. We are trying to engage with the winter time. Although sometimes it's quite bad. Although sometimes it's quite freezing. But still, people can do things in the most enjoyable manner. So, my title today is a reflection of what I'm going to, and of what I mentioned earlier, to how to harness the winter madness. So, a brief overview. So, this might not be relevant, but I will tell you later that this will be very relevant to what we talk. In 2020, the Minister of Trade assigned me as the ministerial spokesperson, and I was also assigned as the economic advisor at that time by Agus Parman. And this is me. So people are trying to know me. The media is actually quite intensive in making some interviews on how I became the spokesperson. But this is actually quite a process, achievement for me. Why? Because at my early childhood, I was actually had some difficulties in speaking because I was a stuttered boy, so I cannot speak clearly at that time. My early childhood, and it got worse because at that time bullying are everywhere, right? So if you're stuttered, people are actually, make fun of you everywhere, especially in the elementary school. So it got worse. Okay. But yeah, things becoming better when I actually growing up under the new environment. So this is actually a very, very priceless achievement for me. Once as another kid, and when I was assigned as the spokesperson, the stuttering community in Indonesia actually gave me some kind of appreciation, because one stutter becomes a ministerial spokesperson. So yeah, for those of you who are still struggling with everything we have today, so it's fun because you still can grow and you can still learn and you can still actually enhance your life afterwards. But I'm not going to talk about me. I'm going to talk about what happened during my time there in 2020. And it's very relevant. You can see here, Turkmen versus Summers. So what's actually the relation between those and these three events over here? These three pictures. And I can add up some more here. Janet Ellen and Jerome Hall. In 2020, I entered the minister's room. I knocked the door and I told the minister that we are going to have some problems. May 2020. I told the minister that the US stimulus, the European stimulus, and most of the advanced country stimulus will create a disproportional effect. Global supply and demand relation. So as an economist, you predict things, you forecast major events in the future, right? Economists. You are all economists, so you do some forecasting, you're doing some prognosis, and so on and so forth. That's your thing, and that's also my thing. Right? So, but most of the time, economists actually fail to actually give you the exact number, right? So, if we can actually make some similarities with other occupation or other professional occupation, maybe we can actually put the economists and someone or dukun at the same level. So every time you go to the dukun, you ask him whether or not you will get rich next year. But how can I become rich next year? Right. And then in the next year, you come again to the dukun and say, why I'm not rich? And the dukun say, so every time I told you not to go to the zoo every Wednesday, but you went there. You did it anyway. So yeah, that's why you cannot become rich, because there is some action that you don't make or you can't do, right? So that's the point. But economics is just like the same. Yeah. Next year, for example, the media, the reporters ask the economists, what's actually the future or the next year's economic growth? We say numbers, 5.3%, 5.2%. And the next year, at the end of the year, The reporters asked us, why is not happening? Why is it below expectation? And so on and so forth. So we say things. So because the assumption is not actually there. Yeah, we have, in economics, we have assumptions, right? Ceteris paribus factor. We hold other things constant. As they are changing, so will be the outcome. Right? So, yeah, that's the thing. We are actually the same like Fithra. We have assumption. They have, in Indonesia we call it pantangan. They have kemenyan, herbs. You make fire of the herbs, and then you make jumpy, you make doa out of it. And economists, we use data. Is it? Right? It's the same mystical value. Right? It's actually, we use the data and we predict things. Essentially the same. But the thing is, what makes us actually dependable? So people always ask us, every time, every year, although they know that maybe through the past experience, we failed to actually give the exact numbers, but at least economists give you some magnitude. Is it going up or going down? Going south or going north? So the magnitude is actually very essential. So at that time, I told the minister that we are going to have some problems due to the massive stimulus from the US. Fortunately or unfortunately, US, because they're so big, so every time they're doing things, everyone votes. Bandwagon effect. They're creating the so-called bandwagon effect. Because if other countries not doing just like what US is doing, they will actually left behind. So as simple as that. So when US is giving the stimulus, so do the other countries, especially the advanced economies. Okay, and this very stimulus is creating and was created, and I told the minister will be creating at that time, because at that time it's still actually quite vague what is actually the outcome of the stimulus. But I told the minister this will create a disproportional growth between supply and demand. So the fact Jerome Powell and also Janet Yellen agree to push the economy even more because they need this push factor. In 2021, in literally 2021, if I'm mistaken, or maybe at the last year of 2020, there was a debate between Larry Summers and Paul Krugman. The debate was around this fiscal stimulus and the monetary stimulus. And it was actually, John Wick, they had this heartbreaker, right? We have the John Wick and then Mark Wick. They will have some kind of, a duel. And they have some kind of heartbreaker, the age indicators. Right? So, Marcus Bruner from Princeton, becoming the age indicator, became the heartbreaker, became the moderator of this tension debate between Paul Krugman and Larry Summers. What is actually the debate? What were they debating? So this was stimulus. Krugman argues that this is needed. You need the stimulus. Why? Because the economy is lagging. All of the actors in the economy during the pandemic, they cannot actually move. Freeze. So the government should do something, and the stimulus is there, and the stimulus is actually becoming the focal point. So it's okay to have a big stimulus. And from the other side, Larry Summers argued. Krugman, by the way, is a Nobel laureate in 2008, if I'm not mistaken. A very prominent figure, economist. And we have also Larry Summers, again, a very prominent figure, economist, and was serving for Bill Clinton in the late of 1990s, as well serving as also as the finance minister for Bill Clinton. Summers argued that this is too much. This will create problems. Summers versus Krugman. Myself, I'm seeing that this will create a demand overshooting globally, while the supply was actually quite staggering, a constrained supply capacity. Why? Because at that time, okay, you give money, okay, you can spend your money, but the thing is, the industry is not growing because the pandemic. The pandemic immobilized your economic activity, right? So you cannot actually run the industry, you cannot run the engine of the industry. So, unlike from the supply side, the supply cannot catch the ever-growing demand. So we have the demand overshooting. So I told the minister that this will create a global inflation and we should be aware of it. So we should take some immediate actions. So as the Minister of Trade, I told the Minister that we need to do some collaboration with other countries, especially in ASEAN, because maybe, just maybe, at one point of time, they will actually restrict their import to entertain their domestic capacity, their domestic economy. So when that happens, we're in trouble. Because we cannot get rice, we cannot get commodities, we cannot get staple foods. So inflation will soar. I told the minister, just in 2012. Yellen and Powell, at that time, were seeing that the inflationary shock was still transitory. So we need this. We need this push. It's okay to have the demand overshooting as long as the economy is growing. It's okay. But the thing is, in 2022, Russia versus Ukraine, unprecedented event. This is creating extra tensions to inflation. In 2021, the second debate from between Krugman and also Summers, that point of time, Krugman said, sorry, I was wrong. This is too much. This is creating inflationary pressure. There is no longer transitory. But now it's becoming more to a runaway inflation. In Japanese, we call it mulakno atau kiso. Inflation story. What happened? And what is actually the response from the Fed? They raised the interest rate. Right? The interest rate is increasing. Just like what I mentioned earlier, because US is big enough, they will create the bandwagon effect all over the place. So almost every advanced economy and also emerging economies, they also raise the interest rate. When they raise the interest rate, of course the global demand is decreasing. So what is actually the aim of the interest rate? To tame the inflation. So in the US, it's actually quite unique. Yeah? The unemployment rate is very low. It's very low. Right? So this is some anecdotal case in the US. I have a friend of mine running a restaurant in the US. after the recovery period, so opening up the restaurant, but he couldn't find any staffs. It's quite difficult. Because the staff that were previously assigned within the restaurant, they switched sector. Because of this spending, because of the stimulus, they use the money to do what? Invest in the stock market, invest in crypto, and so on and so forth. So now, I won't work into your restaurant anymore, because now I'm rich. I can use my stuffs here. I won't work again in your restaurant, so I have my things. So unemployment rate is very low, right? So the US now is trying to raise the unemployment rate. Right? By closing the gap between the demand and the supply. Because the demand is here, the demand of the industry is here. But the supply of the workers is here. So you need to minimize the gap. And this will create also inflation. So that's why the US is increasing the interest rate. If you're seeing through the timeline, it's just like a flip-flop also. What are you going to do actually? You're giving the stimulus and now you're actually raising the interest rate. In 2021, you say that everything is fine. You won't raise the interest rate until 2024, 2025, but now you're raising the interest rate. That creates problem. So we have the crash. What happened? As I mentioned earlier, the interest rate is raising, right? And it is very much unexpected from the banking industries as a whole, because implicitly speaking, in 2021, Jerome Powell and Janet Yellen has told the banking sectors that everything is going to be fine. We won't raise the interest rate. We won't. Not until 2024. Right? And as a response, the banking industry, what did they do? They bought treasury bonds. 10-year treasury bonds. Why they are doing that? Why actually they bought this treasury bonds? Treasury, US treasury, 10-year bond. What? Because of the fiscal stimulus. You have the excess capacity everywhere, and especially in tech industries, liquidity, excess liquidity, right? With the excess liquidity, if you're having your money, what do you do with your money? Okay, you can invest, and you can actually save it to the banking sector, right? Most of the fiscal stimulus are also coming also to the tech industries that were very much in a growth mode during the pandemic, right? Every time everything is growing, right? In tech industries, nice and so on and so forth. So the money is circling through the tech industries. They have money. I said, if I have money, I will put some of my money in the banks as depositors. Right? But the thing is, when you deposit your money, the bank should do something. Because if it is too much, it is becoming a much more of an operational cost for the banking industries. So they need to do something, right? Or else this will become cost for them. Cost of maintaining the money. So they need to lend the money, right? But the thing is, if you lend the money, you need to make sure that the money is safe. You lend the money, and you have the criteria, risk criteria, and so on and so forth. This is becoming a bottleneck because the inflow is quite staggering, but you need to actually channel through the money. So how do you do that? You buy bonds, right? It is actually the most secure things to do. Bonds, right? It is very much different with what happened in 2008. Bank lending and the financial sector was actually throwing away the money into very bad credits. Right? But now it's different. This time is different. They're lending money to the most secure assets as possible. Oh. Okay. So it's very natural, a rational way of thinking. So of course, ideally speaking, you need actually to expand your portfolio, not only in the bonds, also to other sectors. But the thing is, when this is flowing high enough, so you need to actually lend it also as fast as the inflow. So, as the safe haven bond is actually the way to do it. And then the interest rates raise. That is happening. You know what happened with interest rate? You know what is happening? The relation between the interest rate and the US Treasury bond? If you already learned in your monetary economics class or your finance class, bond, you have price and the interest rate. Right? Bond, you have price and interest rate. The value of the bond and also the interest rate. And inversely related. If the interest rate is going up, so the value is going down. Vice versa. Right? And what happened? The interest rate went up at that time. And then the value is going down. Right? So, this is a potential loss. Still a potential loss. Loss in the paper. But the problem is, when the Fed is also raising the interest rate, the liquidity everywhere, globally speaking, is actually becoming very punched. Constrained. Right? So, some layoff from the tech industries. As the depositors, I need my money. Right? So, okay, so because it's not profitable, I cannot make more money, so I need to actually get my money from the bank. Right? So, SVB, most of the depositors coming from the tech industries. Crunching everywhere, so the depositors need to take out the money. And at some point, the SVB, the bank, received, this is not in line. People are getting their money back, but we need to do something because if not, they cannot actually withdraw the money in the future. So they sell the bond. And they realize the loss. Right? So the bond becoming now having less value than before because already been sold. Previously it's only potential loss, but when they sell it, it's becoming a realized loss. Right? And then the bank should do something. Right? The bank should do something to cover the loss. So they call some of the prime depositors, and most of them are coming from the tech industries, and they say, the SVB say that we want to sell some of our stocks to finance the loss. Because all the techies were very sensitive. They were seeing this. This is trouble. This is problem. Although the SVB told the depositors, the prime depositors, we are going to be fine. But that was translated with most of the depositors from the SVB as this is a problem. So, when they want to cover the loss, the depositors are taking away the money. Now in the era of social media everywhere, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you name it, the information are becoming very, very wild. a transfer from one to the other. So that this created the so-called backlash in the social media, right? So that created the SPB, crush, and crunch. So in 2017, I was presenting my research in UIII Department of Mathematics. I told the participants at that time that the nature of tech industries is quite perpetual, quite dynamic. You can be an incumbent today, but the next time you will be out of the play. You can be a new entrant today, and the future will be an incumbent. It's very dynamic. It's a perpetual innovation everywhere. So, given the nature, so you need to be aware of everything that is going on. It's just like a tidal wave. It is crunching everything. The tidal wave. So you need to harness the wave. Of course, there is also have some thoughts on SPB. This should be tackled. In the US, it's becoming more of major issues because everything is connected there. When I went to Silicon Valley in 2018, most of the Silicon Valley, neighborhood, they are actually a part of SPB as depositors. SPB is just like the usual bank, actually. It's not like a digital banking sort. It's traditional bank, a very traditional bank. But it's located in Silicon Valley. Of course, your depositors coming from the tech industries, right? So, yeah, that's becoming the extra issues of the Silicon Valley because you're actually focusing on tech industries. Although you're lending some for tech industries, you're lending some for manufacturing, consumption, and so on and so forth, and you're also using some for the treasury. So you're not always entertaining the tech industries, of course, but naturally speaking, SPB is located in the Silicon Valley. So you need to be aware of what will going to happen under the circle of the tech industry. So, is it a tech winter? We don't know. Yeah. If it is winter, it's just one season. Seasonal. You have winter. After winter, you have what? Yes. Spring. Comes. And then you have also summer. And you have 4 seasons. Right. Winter is just one of the seasons. Right? So, it's okay. In season time, in winter time, you buy jackets, you go out. Doesn't matter. So winter is just one seasonal. Because at that time, in 2020 and 2021, the tech industry is also having some summer and spring. So it's just quite natural. It's just like a cyclical behavior. What's next? What is the tech winter? How is it affecting us? So we're coming back again to the previous slide. How is it affecting us in Indonesia? Luckily, we are quite disintegrated with what happened to the rest of the world, especially coming from the US. What happened in 2008? Of course, we had some problems, of course, in Indonesia, but we survived because our financial sector is quite decoupled from the outside world. What decoupled? So is fortune or unfortunate. It's a blessing in disguise. And it's the same thing happening today. I asked my fellow stars about STD. Do you have some problems? I asked some of my staff, do you have some problems? Yes, but not directly related. You don't have some portfolios. You don't have portfolios in STD. Yes, we have maybe some liquidity problems, but that's quite natural. In macro perspective, I'm still seeing that the Indonesian economy still has a chance to grow more than 5%. Just last week, the IMF just revised our economic projection upward, not downward, upward. Previously 4.8%, that's becoming 4.9%. Upward revision. So it's okay. Next policy projected this year about 4.9 to 5.1%, which is quite okay. So what is actually the prime mover of our economy in this year? 3.4 things. First is the post-pandemic euphoria. Where the consumption is going well. In this last publication from the Statistical Office, our economy grew 5.31%, which is last quarter, and the consumption grew 5.39%, just above the overall economic consumption. While in the pandemic period, the consumption is always below the economic growth. So this is actually a good thing. And then we have some other things. Sectoral growth. We have now transportation and logistics. It grew approximately 25.81%. Transportation and logistics, meaning that traffic jams everywhere. We experience traffic jams right now. I think it's becoming much worse than just before pre-pandemic, because it grew 25.81%. Transportation and logistics, food, accommodation, and also drinks, 17.83%. It's a very high growth. Yeah, the thing is that their contribution is quite minimal. For transportation and logistics, 5.01%. For accommodation, drinks and food is about 2.32%. So it's quite minimum. But post-pandemic euphoria is there. The consumption is growing. One. And the second, the middle class is getting stronger. Especially the top 20% of income level. Maybe we cannot call this as the middle class, but the top income earners, they are growing and they are spending. Okay. And the third, fiscal consolidation. This last quarter, government spending, they grow negative, minus 2.88%. Meaning that the fiscal spending is going down, but the economy is going up, meaning that we are going okay, and this fiscal capacity is quite consolidated, so we can have enough money in the future as an intertemporal intervention. If things getting worse, we still have the money. That's what Prophet Yusuf told us. If you have the money, if you have the product today, 7 years in richness, and 7 years in the worst time, okay, forecast 14 years ahead, right? So if you have money, don't spend it all. You still save some for your worst time. So that is what the government is currently doing. Fiscal consolidation. 3 things that can actually sustain our economic growth this year and next year. So what's next? If you see here, you know, something is going down, something is going up. If you have so-called or much likely a financial crisis, you have a commodity boom. Okay, so you have the yin and yang. Here we have here. And it's quite comforting that SPV is just a regular bank, it's not the biggest bank. Can it actually create a systemic impact? Maybe, yes, maybe not. But things today is quite comforting. But you need to be aware that SPV, we have other banks that is quite prone to shocks in terms of the depositors' behavior. So, to see things for Indonesia and for the global world this year and next year, we're still quite optimistic. But we need also to be extra aware because maybe extra unprecedented events are just lying